Buenos días y bienvenidos. Oh, that was wonderful. I welcome you to Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church, a liberal religious community where love works. I'm the Reverend Katie Romano Griffin, one of your ministers here at Cedar Lane, and I want you to know that whoever you are, wherever you're from, whomever you love, wherever you are on this life's journey, and whatever your gender identity, sexual orientation, beliefs, or immigration status, you are welcome here. A special welcome to those who are joining our service online, whether in the moment or catching up with us later. We are glad to have you with us. And if you're new to Cedar Lane, we have a small gift for you. So please do, if you're comfortable doing so, raise your hand and keep it raised so that our ushers and greeters can find you. There's a wonderful brochure that will come with your gift. And if you can tear off the back sheet of that fantastic brochure, fill out your information, please do put it in the offering basket when it comes around, because the greatest gift you can give us, besides the gift of your presence, is the ability to stay in touch. And we have one more person up in the front. Thank you. Please know that everyone is invited to stay after service to enjoy coffee and conversation. And I have a few special announcements for you. If you notice, there was an insert next to your order of celebration. There's great information in there about this vital and engaged community. I want to give you just a few highlights. The pastoral visitors are an extension of the ministry team. Today's pastoral visitor is Joanne Jersey. Joanne will be by the Joys and Sorrows candles table throughout the service and after the service. So if you would like some support today, if there's something on your mind or heart, whether it is personal, national, or global, please do see Joanne today. We have a special guest speaker who will be with us today, the executive director and founder of Casa Ruby, Ruby Corado. Casa Ruby is the only bilingual LGBTQ organization, and it provides life-saving services in the DC area. We are sharing the plate with Casa Ruby today, so you're going to hear a little bit more about Casa Ruby when it comes time for the offering. We also have a reception for Ruby, which will be happening in our library, which is through these doors to my left. And then it's just a quick right. There's going to be some fabulousness happening in there. And there's also a reception in the lounge for our volunteers as a thank you. And we invite you to please move between the receptions. Today is a day of joy and connection, celebration and gratitude, and food. So in celebration and gratitude, please turn and greet your neighbors. And food. Good morning. Good morning, neighbor. Gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near.
Volunteers are the lifeblood of our congregation. Nearly every day, our community benefits from the gifts of time, energy, spirit, and expertise our members and friends bring to the table. And so today, we'd like to lift up our many volunteers and express our heartfelt thanks.
Cedar Lane is blessed to have many volunteers who give of their time and talent in support of our vision and mission and embodying shared ministry. In just a moment, Gail, Katie, and I will name different volunteer roles in the life of our congregation, and will invite you to rise as you're able in body and or in spirit, or raise your hand if you have volunteered in that role this year. And we request that you hold your applause till the very end, when we will have something to do at the end.
All right, let's get started. First, we'd like to thank those who help out on Sunday mornings. If you've done one of these Sunday morning volunteers jobs, please rise and remain standing in body or spirit, or raise your hand. Ushers, greeters, coffee servers, visitor table volunteers, flower team members, worship associates, pastoral visitors.
We'd also like to thank those who teach or help in religious education for children, youth, and adults. Teachers, advisors, and helpers, please rise and remain standing, or if you're already standing, raise your hand.
And let us thank those who've offered us their musical gifts, our choir members, children, youth, adults, bell choir, special musicians, our AV team. Please rise and remain risen, or raise your hand.
Some of our volunteer roles are easy to see, but some are more quiet and behind the scenes. We have several important teams that serve in those quiet ways. Our office volunteers, our AV team, visual arts team, our security team. Please rise and remain standing, or raise your hand.
We have many wonderful ministry teams in our church, more than 40, if I remember correctly. If you happen to be the leader of one of those teams, please rise and remain rising, or raise your hand if you're already up. And if you're a member of one of these teams, please rise and remain rising, or raise your hand.
Social justice is an important ministry of our church, so let us recognize those who lead our social ministry team and the leaders of our social justice teams for sanctuary, immigrant justice, environmental justice, racial justice, gender justice, food ministry, and Action in Montgomery, AIM. Please rise and remain standing, or raise your hand.
Or both hands.
Or sorry.
If you're a member of one of our social justice teams, please rise and remain rising, or raise your hand if you're already up.
A special recognition on this Pride Sunday goes to Marge Diamond for her many years of dedicated service. To helping Cedar Lane become a more welcoming congregation for LGBTQIA members.
If you are the chair of a board committee, financial policy, endowment, human resources, governance, mosaic makers, fundraising and development, or a member of the board committee, please rise and remain standing, or raise your hand.
If you led or helped out at our annual stewardship campaign or special fundraisers such as the fall auction, rummage sale, or special events, the holiday craft fair, Halloween trunk or treat, Easter egg hunt, concerts, movie nights, please rise and remain standing, or raise your hand.
We would also like to thank those volunteers who've coordinated groups and programs like the Alliance, Science and Religion, Men's Group, Bridge, Soul Matters Sharing Circles, Grief Support Group, Families Weathering the Storm. Please rise or remain standing, or raise your hand.
Or stand up on the chair.
No, those chairs are slippery.
And if you served in other one-time or occasional volunteer positions like our campus cleanup days, Rock Creek cleanup, or other activities and programs that we may have missed, please rise and remain standing or raise your hand.
And last but far from least, we would like to thank our devoted members of the board, including our outgoing president, Gail Riley. Who serve as our highest lay leadership. Please rise or raise your hand. Board members, raise your hand. All right. Now, let us all join together and say, thank you, hooray. Shall we try it?
Thank you, hooray! Thank you, Cedar Lane volunteers, for all that you give. Please turn to your neighbor and say, thank you and hooray! And maybe say, thank you for sharing your time, your good ideas, and your expertise. Thank you for sharing your time, your good ideas, and your expertise.
And most of all, thank you for your caring, for the heart and soul you bring to the shared work of creating and sustaining beloved community. Together, your hearts and hands make Cedar Lane happen and be a wonderful place. Thank you.
Thank you.
As Babs comes forward to light our chalice, the symbol of our faith and gathered community, please rise in body or in spirit as we go through our chalice lighting words. As we gather to strengthen our community and our friendships, let the light of this chalice remind us of the light that our Unitarian Universalist religion is trying to shed on the murkiness of ignorance and superstition that surrounds same-sex love and gender identity. Let us remember with gratitude those who have preceded us, those early acts of courage and sacrifice that have made possible the degree of openness with which we can lead our lives today. And let us resolve that our own efforts will add to this light so that those who come after may someday enjoy the freedom to hold hands in the daylight and to love without fear, and the experience less trauma because of having the audacity to exist as they are. Please remain standing as we sing hymn 1012, When I Am Frightened.
When I am frightened, will you reassure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? Will you be strong for me? Sing to me quietly. Will you share some of your stories with me? If you will show me compassion, then I may learn to care as you do. Then I may learn to care. When I am angry, will you you still embrace me? When I am thoughtless, will you understand? Will you believe in me? Stand by me willingly. Will you share some of your questions with me? If you will show me acceptance, then I may learn to give as you do. Then I may learn to give. When I am troubled, will you listen to me? When I am lonely, will you be my friend? Will you be there for me? Comfort me tenderly. Will you share some of your feelings with me? If you will show me commitment, then I may learn to love as you do. Then I may learn to love.
Hello, there is a slight change in your order of service. My name is Anne Chernikoff, and I will be giving you the story time for all ages. Our march continues. Right. Throughout the 1960s, I hear stories of women organizing for opportunities and choices. I read newspaper articles highlighting Martin Luther King's dream of equality for people of every color. I watch TV and see people gathering to end war and build peace. I search for any hint of my story. The clothes I want to wear could land me in jail. I simply want to look how I feel. My parents demand that I change or leave home forever. I can't change who I am. At the bus station, I must decide if my new home will be New York or San Francisco. The choice is easy. Bus fare to New York is cheaper. My home becomes the gritty streets in the artistic neighborhoods of Greenwich Village. Survival depends on the acceptance of my new family of friends. We show our love by protecting each other from the police officers who are paid to harass us. Here comes Lily Law, they warn before a police turns the corner. Watch out for Betty Badge, I yell in return. Here comes Lily Law. At night, we head to one of the few neighborhood bars where the doorman guards us from the outside world. My favorite bar quickly becomes the Stonewall Inn, where a rainbow of people, young and old, in suits and in drag, dark-skinned and light, come together. I mostly dance in the back, where the music is louder and the people are young like me. At Stonewall, I allow myself to accept the friendship of strangers and temporarily ignore the threat of the police that always looms nearby. On an incredibly hot night in June of 1969, I am dancing with a crowd of friends. When the music is silenced, we stop. Our eyes adjust to the sudden bright lights. Police officers storm in. We're being raided, I yell. Here we go again. During most raids, we leave the area quickly to avoid trouble. Tonight is too hot to run. Our party continues on the streets, and the sidewalks, and in the nearby park. We wait for our friends who have not yet been released by the police officers who raided Stonewall. Under the full moon, we cheer and clap as our friends slowly exit one by one. They thank us by blowing kisses and posing. People exiting nearby bars are drawn to the laughter and the commotion. Together, we cheer louder. Before too long, whispers of unsettling news began to spread throughout the late-night crowds. The police are tearing up Stonewall. The jukeboxes are being smashed. I watch my family being dragged out in handcuffs. Applause and jokes make way for anger and confusion. We chant gay power. We sing we shall overcome. Queens swing their purses at officers trying to push them into a white police van. A pack of officers struggle to contain a butch woman who furiously resists arrest. She calls out to the crowd, "Why don't you guys do something?" Her pleas for help inspire action. Enough is enough. We throw copper pennies and shout dirty coppers. When we run out of coins, we throw bottles, bricks, and whatever else we can find. We call our friends on payphones. Come to Stonewall. Something is happening. The crowd swells to hundreds of people who have nothing to lose and their lives to gain. The outnumbered police feel our fury and retreat into the bar. We stand on cars, light fires, and band together. A lifetime of hurt explodes on the streets, my ears ringing with the sound of blaring sirens. Officers in riot gear rush towards us. Greenwich Village sisters and brothers lock bruised arms in solidarity. Into the morning and on and off for days, we fight past our suffering to demand the freedom we all deserve. I am no longer alone. My chosen family surrounds me and fills me with pride. Our cries for justice can no longer be ignored. We haven't changed any laws, and the discrimination continues, but our civil rights movement has launched. Celebrations all over the world continue to honor the historic movement we started many years ago. Families, students, doctors, teachers, and yes, even police officers are among millions who proudly join our annual marches around the world. Progress has been made, but progress is not the dream. Our march continues so that we may truly fulfill a dream of equality, justice, and freedom for everyone. In June of 1969, simply being true to yourself could be risky. When the Stonewall Inn was raided, people came together to say enough is enough. A riot was sparked. A civil rights movement was launched. Thank you.
That story already set the stage, but let's go a couple years in the future. You're a young lesbian activist, and you've just been to your very first Pride March in 1971. You were fired up, and you know that change has to happen. And on the way home in the car, you write these lyrics. I don't want to see my brothers kicked into the dust no more. Their dreams all turn to rust no more, no more, no more. I don't want to see my sisters having to give in no more. Their loving called a sin no more, no more, no more. And the Stonewall nation's gonna have its liberation. Wait and see, just wait and see. For together we can rise above it. We're gonna be ourselves and love it. The Stonewall nation is gonna be free. Come on, family, march along. We're all gonna sing our song right now. Right now. Siblings, take me by the hand. We're gonna build our promised land right now. Right now. And the Stonewall nation's gonna have its liberation. You can take your tolerance and shove it. We're gonna be ourselves and love it. The Stonewall Nation is gonna be free. You can take your tolerance and shove it. We're gonna be ourselves and love it. The Stonewall Nation is gonna be free. And the Stonewall Nation is gonna be free.
Good morning. I'm Susan Easterly, and this is my spouse, Sylvia Fisher. We will both share our reflections with you today. In 1969, Sylvia and I were children in Florida and unaware of the history being made at Stonewall Inn. However, in the 70s, we were frequently exposed to news stories about Anita Bryant's crusade against the gay community. Growing up in the 70s, there was no such thing as an LGBTQ high school student community. Sylvia and I began our relationship in college in the early 80s, but we stayed closeted since we feared the real possibility of being kicked out of school, or at least the dorms, if our relationship were known. There was one LGBT group on campus, but we never quite built up the nerve to actually attend a meeting or event. What if we were seen? We began the lifelong process of coming out in the 80s and became involved in the Florida LGBTQ community in the late 80s to early 90s. We felt welcome and free to be ourselves. However, outside the community, we sometimes experienced prejudice, discrimination, and open hostility, and we felt very much at risk. For example, several KKK members were present, complete with robes and hoods, at Tampa's first Gay Pride Parade. And I remember marching just inches away from one member on the sidelines.
Sue and I were hand in hand and dreadfully afraid. To be very frank, we had the police on one side of us, and we were a small group of LGBT people who were sort of activists in Tampa, and on the other side was the KKK members. And we had all decided as we were walking, we're not sure that we can rely on the police to help us if we are assaulted. So we had all these plans how to combat any attack that may have come upon our person. We ended up marching peacefully through, but it was a rather terrifying experience to simply walk as a group in a public manner.
Also, during a public hearing about LGBT city and county protections, the hostility was vocal and palpable. You want to say something?
Yes, I have to say that we were there with the whole group again, and this was the first time that Tampa had ever really looked at possibly granting any types of protections for LGBT populations. It was rather disturbing because many people who were strongly religiously identified spat on us, called us names, yelled at us, and went up and made testimony against us in ways that described our lives in unbelievably inhumane and inaccurate terms. It became very apparent that we were at such an impasse that when the vote came through to pass some rules and laws to prevent some discrimination against our community, that this story wasn't over. In fact, when we got into the elevator out of the municipal building in Tampa, somebody came on and looked at us. I'd have to say, with knowing hate, said, "You all think this is over? We've just started."
The day after winning these first-time protections, the opposition convinced a judge to block the new laws from taking effect until after the issue was voted on a ballot. We also personally experienced public accommodations and housing discrimination on a few occasions.
It's really bad enough to eat at a Denny's anyway. But then to be turned down, not being allowed to be seated or be waited on. That Denny's line was supposed to be funny. It's a true story. You do that stuff when you're in college and you go to Denny's. So, we were trying to get a hotel, a motel room when our place was fumigated. No one would rent to us because we were 2 women in a single room.
We moved to the DC area in 1995, and our daughter Elise was born in 98. I was able to adopt her in PG County's first ever second parent adoption. Since we were setting legal precedent for PG County, so I had to do a home study and many additional steps not required in traditional step-parent adoptions. This process lasted several months.
I call it Susan's pregnancy because I went through 9 months, then she went through 9 months to get it. Okay, so a few things that I want to reflect on here. Number one, just a personal memory. So I got pregnant on my lunch hour, like so many women do. And I got over there from my office to the clinic, and my lovely wife, who was not my legal spouse, showed up with a beautiful bouquet. And the nurse who had been so kind to us said, "Thank you so much," and snatched it. True story. Absolutely true. So we looked at each other, and I had more things on my mind, so I didn't say anything. So that's first. Secondly, where are we on the judge? Okay, so yes. The judge situation, the situation of Susan becoming the first second parent adopter in all of Prince George's County. We had a heterosexual adoption lawyer, attorney who was a specialist in straight or opposite sex adoptions, who also worked with cross-racial adoptions. She was African American. She told us she had never had so many barriers to an adoption, even when a child abuse was involved. She said that they lost our paperwork for 2 months. They did a home study on Susan, which if we had been an opposite sex couple, it would have been a piece of paper that we would have had to demonstrate, a wedding certificate, and gone down and filed it. In less than 2 weeks, she would have been a parent. And I want to talk a minute about the judge. Because when we really did not know walking in after that 9-month pregnancy of Susan's if she was going to be a parent. And I want to thank my parents, who, my father's not alive, because they wrote a letter in support of Susan. A friend of ours who was a Catholic priest, he wrote a letter in support of Susan. But we still did not know when we walked in if the judge was going to rule in our favor. I knew he was probably anxious about setting a precedent in a county in a very politically hot time. And then our daughter, who is by temperament, compassionate, kind, quiet, very, very mild baby, just as the judge was waiting to rule, decided to cry. And the judge got all flustered and said, okay, approved, out. Get out of here. Thanks, Lise. We're very grateful.
In 2004, Sylvia and I started attending Cedar Lane services, enrolled our daughter in the RE, and signed the membership book. Cedar Lane was one of the first faith communities where Sylvia and I felt we could be ourselves. We did not have to explain our family, and to this day, presumptions about orientations and relationships are not made. LGBTQ individuals are free to come out, but don't really have to. Diversity of orientation and gender identity is a natural part of Cedar Lane culture.
We also were very grateful because I had worked 24 hours in 2 days. I was dead beat. And a lot of you who know Susan might find her shy, retiring, sweet. I know Susan better than you all. And I get home, and I'm like literally crawling in the house saying, "I'm home, honey." And she says, "Take this." She hands me a big bag. "Step outside, let's go." I'm like, "Where are we going?" And this woman drove 12 hours straight to Provincetown in Massachusetts to get us married. I slept and kept waking up in different states. Where are we now? I don't know how you did it, and I will tell you that we were one of the last 3 couples to be allowed to be married from outside of the state of Massachusetts before they shut down marriage for out-of-staters. We made it there just in time. And I will talk a moment about we had to go through a lot of rigmarole. People in Massachusetts, I love them. They helped us a lot. They told us how to fill out paperwork so that we could be approved. They gave us a lot of guidance. We also had to meet with a judge. And the judge insisted on talking to our 6-year-old child alone. I don't really like leaving my child alone with another adult that I don't know, so I was sitting outside, and I heard him say, "How do you feel about this, these two people marrying, and you call your parents?" And Elise is articulate, if nothing else, and her little voice, she said, "This is the happiest day of my life." And now, because I'm a sentimental fool, I want to tell you a minute about our wedding. Okay. My best friend, my mother, not in that order, my mother and my best friend flew up and met us there. We were at a hotel right on Provincetown, right on the beach in the Atlantic Ocean. The sun was setting. A heterosexual minister officiated. Our daughter was wearing a corsage and a beautiful white dress. We were sitting together, standing together, and she united us in June 2nd of 2004.
15 years ago.
15 years ago. And I'm not a tearful person, but I cried my eyes out. And then we had to share the cake with the minister because she was so nice. It was a wonderful thing, and I will never forget that moment. So now I want to talk. When we came back, we were well treated by a community that was rather new to us. Cedar Lane, we had not been here very long. You all made an announcement in the newsletter about our marriage. Even though we were new to the community, we felt so much support and so much kindness. Now, we've already recognized somebody here that Susan and I deeply admire and personally love, but I want to say something about Marge Diamond. This lady over here, okay? It's one thing to be in the community and be an activist. It's another thing to be an ally and be an activist. And I've always loved allies. I need allies. We all need allies in our community. Marge has been the most amazing advocate. She reminds me a lot of Sue. You know, she looks shy and quiet and unassuming. Holy cow, are these women determined, hardworking, committed, not fearful, and they will do anything to get to what they believe is morally correct. This lady set up the welcoming congregation. Let's thank her, please. And our last comment is to thank all of you for, there's a lot to be said about the welcoming congregation. The history will be written one day more formally. I know that we stayed up till 3 in.the morning several days, emailing each other, getting it done because we had a certain deadline we had to meet at the national level, which we did meet. But I want to thank you all. Susan and I have now been together for 36 years. And we're grateful to all of you for making them ever so much sweeter and more compassionate and loving. Thank you.
The very same rain, we are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the the other side. I am alone and I am searching, hungering for answers in my time. I am balanced at the brink of wisdom. I'm impatient to receive a sign. I move forward with my senses open. Imperfection, it may be a crime. In humility, I will listen. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living in the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. On this journey through thoughts and feelings, binding intuition, my head, my heart, I am gathering the tools together. I'm preparing to do my part. All of those who have come before me, band together and be my guide. Loving lessons that I will follow. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living in the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. When we get there, we'll discover all of the gifts we've been given to share have been with us since life's beginning, and we've never noticed they were there. We can balance at the brink of wisdom, never recognizing that we've arrived. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living in the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side.
We gather, as we always gather, in sacred space, a place set aside as a sanctuary amid the many challenges of life, a center from which we may gather strength to face these challenges with courage and grace, faith and love. In this time of remembrance, we lift those in our community who are living through significant passages, the small and extraordinary milestones of life. We hold you in our hearts. Let us pause to be present to our spiritual companions and to the concerns of our own hearts within our Cedar Lane community. Our caring extends beyond Cedar Lane to those whose lives are lost or impacted by calamities and violence in our world, especially this week as we mourn the drowning deaths of Oscar Alberto Martinez Ramirez and his 2-year-old daughter, Valeria, while crossing the Rio Grande. For these friends of ours, and for all the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken in our hearts, let us turn to the peace and solace of prayer and silence.
Will you join me in the spirit of prayer? Spirit of life and source of love. This weekend, our nation and the world celebrates the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots that sparked transgender, lesbian, gay, and bisexual people to come together to fight for our rights. May we pause now for moments of memory for those who came before us, especially Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, who were catalysts as well at Stonewall during those days. But there were also others who personally stood up and were counted, and who were thus made a difference for all of us today. We remember you and say thank you. We also remember those who came before and after the Stonewall riot, who combated violence against them just because of who they are, or those through the personal act of coming out changed the system, whether by challenging that system or by changing it from within, whether by actively sharing their ideas with broad audiences, or by quietly affecting individuals one at a time, whether by looking outward to help others understand us, or by looking within to help make ours a better community. Through all of these courageous actions and so many more, we say thank you. Every time you brought us forward, even under the pressures of physical pain and torture, of economic devastation, or political failure, of social estrangement, or worse, you braved it all. Each of you, by adding your essence, your talented endeavors, and elegant movements, and your clever words and dignified existence. Your dedicated heart and focused minds, your affectionate smile, your quirky ways, in all, your persevering spirits brought others forward behind you and moved us all a little closer to a world that more fully celebrates love. Your contributions are remembered, you are remembered, and we say thank you. Spirit of love, source of light, help us to find a path forward where each of us may live our lives honest to who we are, with grace and empathy for one another. May the difficult lessons and the times of strife nurture compassion in our hearts for others who struggle, especially for those whose hardships are different than our own. May the strength we learn in our tough hours help us to carry another forward when their time of need is in hand. When the world is telling us we have no worth, help us to tell those people that they have worth and dignity, and it is a lie because we all have worth. And steer us away from words like that diminish our neighbor. May we add instead our voice and actions to fight for the civil rights of all people, so that generations behind us may have a more just world. For these things and more, we say amen and ashe. And for those grieving a loss or commemorating an anniversary, are invited to rise in mourning and memory in this moment of silence. May the gathered stand and rise in body and or spirit, for we sing hymn 1053. How could anyone? So, of course, Ruby was supposed to be with us to share a reflection, and she's not. But she will be here along with 3 other women after the service to speak about the work of Casa Ruby. But I wanted to share with you that last year, a lot of trans, gay, bisexual, and lesbian people are hurt and violated. And last year, the most vulnerable were the trans people of color. And there were over 20, I want to say about 23 people that were killed last year. And don't you know, this is June 30th, and we're already up to 13. I want to share with you those names. Typically, we do that in a remembrance service in the end of the year. But I actually wanted to share those names with you now because they're people and they had a life, and we should all recognize the lives they led. January 6th, Dana Martin, 31, a trans black woman shot in Montgomery, Alabama. In March, Jaslyn Ware, trans black woman found dead in her Memphis apartment. March 30th, Ashanti Carmen, 27, a trans black woman shot in Prince George's County in Maryland. April 15th, Claire Legato, 21, a trans black woman shot in Cleveland, Ohio. May 18th, Muesha Booker, a 23 black trans woman shot in Dallas, Texas. Michelle Tamika Washington, aged 40, shot in Philadelphia, another trans black woman. Paris Cameron, 20, a trans black woman who were among a number killed in a LGBT home in Detroit. There were 3 other people shot that day, and they were all gay men. June 1st, Shandell Lindsay, a black trans woman found dead, and she was pulled out of a lake in Dallas. June 1st, Joan Medina, a 25-year trans woman from El Salvador, died after being in ICE custody. June 5th, Chanel Sherlock, a 23-year-old trans black woman, shot in Lumberton, North Carolina. June 6th, Leilene Polanco, aged 27. She died in her cell at Rikers Island. And she was in jail because she failed to pay a $500 bail from bench warrants. That was the reason she was in jail. June 3rd, Zoe Spears, age 23, a trans black woman that died in Fairmont Heights. She was shot in Maryland. June 25th, Brooklyn Lindsay, a 32-year-old black trans woman found dead in Kansas City, Missouri. 13 wonderful people, 2 of which died here in Maryland. We need to do something about this, y'all. We really, really do. I'm going to actually give us another prayer for transgender justice, written by the Transforming Hearts Collective of the UUA that has been formed to work on trans justice within our communities. So pray with me again, please. Spirit of life and love that resides with and among us, we enter this moment with all that we are, with an open heart and with a love for justice. We hold and love and pray for all transgender people, so many of whom live under the weight of violence, fear, and intolerance. We hold in love and prayer all the ways that transgender people have survived and thrived in this hostile world. We love and pray all who recognize the significance of gender justice for all people. We who believe in freedom shall not rest until it comes. We pray for the dawn of a new day when the very humanity of trans people is no longer called into question or ignored. We pray that a spirit of compassion and care will find us to overflow, that we have the capacity to listen and learn and grow, not only for our own awareness, but also grow in our willingness to act. We pray for teachers, spiritual leaders, social workers, lawyers, and all people of faith who heed the call to support trans liberation, trans leadership, and trans visibility. May they ultimately lean into the light of truth and justice, offering hope to trans and gender-conforming youth and adults. On this day, we commit and recommit to creating a world where people of all genders know peace, love, and justice. We commit and recommit to living lives of compassion and care for all humanity. We commit and recommit to the healing work of relationship building that will let and help every person know, no matter their gender identity or sexuality, that they are loved and valued. They are loved and valued and are welcome here in our faith community, Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. Amen.
Today's Share the Plate recipient is Casa Ruby, which is promoted by Together. As Katie mentioned, it's the largest bilingual and multicultural organization for LGBTQ folks in Montgomery, in metropolitan DC area, and those lines are very much blurred. Casa Ruby may be in DC, but they support everyone in the local community. Their mission, in addition to providing services, is to create success life stories, which for trans women of color, whether they're Black or Latina, that's an incredibly difficult thing to do. And that's part of why their work is so important. And I want to call attention to both Ashanti Carmon and Zoe Spears. Zoe Spears in particular was a 3-year client of Casa Ruby who had just moved out a week and a half ago, and now she's gone. So Ruby is grieving, the community is grieving. In any case, Casa Ruby began as Ruby's dream almost 30 years ago when she first arrived in Washington, D.C. and found no services to support her needs as a young transgender Latina immigrant. Her drive was to bring resources to these underserved and under-resourced communities, and together enthusiastically supports for Casa Ruby as a provider of services to people who are among the most vulnerable, noting the intersectional nature of communities served by Casa Ruby. Immigrants, people of color, LGBTQ, together honors the fact that the organization was created by and led by transgender women of color. And Ruby Corado is a friend of mine, and she's a wonderful woman, and it's part of why that I recommended Casa Ruby for the Share the Plate. So the offering will now be given and received. Please do so as generously as possible. Thank you.
We've cleared off the table, leftovers saved, washed the dishes, and put them away. I've told you a story, tucked you in tight at the end of your knockabout day. As the moon sets its sails to carry you to sleep over the midnight sea, I will sing you a song no one sang to me. May it keep you good company. For you can be anybody you want to be. You can love whomever you will. You can travel any country where your heart beats, and know that I will love you still. You can live by yourself, you can gather friends around, you can choose one special bond, and the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done. There are girls who grow up strong and bold, there are boys quiet and kind. Some race on ahead, some follow behind, some go in their own way in time. Some women love women, some men love men, some raise children, some never do.
You can dream of a day never reaching the end of everything possible for you. Don't be rattled by names, by taunts, by games, but reach out spirits true. If you give your friends the best part of yourself, they'll give the same back to you.
This year for Pride, I had everything planned out. I'd picked out a special outfit. I was gonna go to the museum to see the Stonewall exhibit with some fellow members from Cedar Lane, and later I was going to meet up with a friend who was visiting from out of town to watch the parade from a building that we knew right outside DuPont Circle. It was the first Pride that I was attending since I had come out as bisexual a few years back, and it was going to be perfect. I got to the museum late, so that was a wonderful start. And I ended up seeing most of the exhibit on my own, which was fine, because I enjoyed going at my own pace and being able to read everything that was there. I learned a lot more about the AIDS crisis and how violence left so few people from that time period left. I saw years of fighting and suffering culminate in freedom. I remember feeling so lucky that I know so many people my age who were queer, and none of us had to experience these things because of how many people before us fought for it. We were just free to be who we are. Yet I couldn't quite shake the parts that reminded whoever was reading that things were starting to slip backwards, becoming more physically and politically violent since the current administration took office. At the end of the exhibit, in a short film interviewing people who were present at the Stonewall riots, I learned for the first time how vitally important our First Amendment, especially the right to gather peacefully, was in the fight for safe queer spaces after Stonewall happened. What really struck me was the person at the very end who explained, "Sometimes people ask why we still march. It's because we haven't reached that mountaintop of equality. That's why." After the exhibit, I met up with my fellow Cedar Laners. We discussed what we liked, what we didn't like, what Cedar Lane was doing well, and what it could be doing better. I went on with my day and eventually met with my friend at DuPont Circle and began to enjoy the parade. I was so proud and happy to be there. My absolute favorite float was just a bus of elderly LGBTQ people waving. Happy to be there, happy to be alive, happy that they had made it long enough to see this wonderful, prideful day. Around 7:30 p.m., my friend and I were sitting in a gated ground level patio drinking with some people when we heard screams. I looked up and I saw people running, people of all shapes and sizes and colors in tutus and glitter, fleeing in terror. My mind froze. We began funneling into the building. "What happened?" And a tall woman responded, "Someone heard gunshots." I looked back to see someone closing the gate and locking it. The next thing I know, I am in a closet with people I didn't recognize. They were crying. I heard screams outside. One woman kept rocking her partner and apologizing. I learned that her partner was visiting from Canada. In true gallows humor, the closet people joked about how funny it was that we were back in a closet, and how she had now had a true American experience. We all laughed, and then we didn't. We began to hear banging on our doors. People looked around and debated if we should let anyone in. Eventually we did. I kept thinking about the movie and the right to gather peacefully, and how that didn't feel very true anymore. I came to church the next day on autopilot. I don't really think I knew what I was doing. Seeing all the people here made me want to run. It was a lot. Eventually in the service, we came to a hymn, and it sang, "Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy, now and then, Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. And I just broke down about everything, about the world, about this perfect pride that had been taken from me, about the intense invalidation that I felt when I learned that there were never any shots that were actually fired, and it was a false report. And about how far we still had to go because of how real it still felt. A few days later, on my 23rd birthday, I learned of the death of Zoe Spears. She was the first person I had actually met that had been a victim of a hate crime. And I'm really scared she won't be the last. For 20 years, Cedar Lane has been recognized by the EUA as a welcoming congregation. Our members have done a great job in so many ways, supporting me personally and the LGBT community at large. We have gender-neutral bathrooms, support groups, pronoun stickers, but we could be doing more. Beginning this fall, we are going to the next level by intentionally renewing our welcoming covenant. We will have services like this one that celebrate the LGBT community. We will have classes exploring LGBT issues, and I really hope everyone participates. I know there are probably some of you here today who might not understand why this is so important to us, who may feel as though you were being forced to participate, something you don't particularly care about, who feel as though we are somehow shoving our existence down our throats, down your throats, that we have enough already. If you don't understand and you're sitting here asking yourself why Cedar Lane has to keep changing, why the world has to keep changing, it's because we haven't reached that mountaintop of equality yet. Because we can and we have to do better. Not just for our happiness, but for our safety and that of your children and your grandchildren who may one day realize that they're part of the LGBT community. That's why. Thank you.
So instead of a song, we're going to do a responsive reading. Can you please rise? And your part is the part of the many, and say which phrase feels right for you. And everybody who participated in the service, please come up and use the mic when it is your turn. Today, in our celebration of the 50th anniversary of Stonewall, we affirm with joy that we are proud. Can I have the slide? Okay. Those who would like, I'd like you to say, let me say it first. We are proud to be, we are proud to be lesbian, gay, bisexual,
we are proud to have survived and thrived despite challenges to our dignity, well-being, and sometimes even our lives.
We are proud to be heterosexual.
We are proud to live and work in solidarity with our LGBTQ friends and family. Together, we build the beloved community.
We and those we love have been judged, mistreated, and assaulted.
But we are here and we are proud.
We and those we love have been stereotyped and have faced discrimination.
But we are here and we are proud.
We have seen those we love beaten to death and gunned down.
But we are here and we are proud. We are together and we are proud.
And together we build the beloved community.
Watch as it grows among us, even now.
I wanted to share this clip, which is pieces of pride all over the world back last year in 2018. The Stonewall riot the year after sparked a parade and a march, and since then, those marches have been growing.
When your phone is so versatile and yet so portable at the same time, it's no surprise that more than 85% of us now shoot photos with it.